Welcome to Season 4 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sara F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway.
Hi, and welcome to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode 139, Season 4, episode 15. I'm happy to have you back with me today. Giving a word to the wise, no better time but now to start preparing if you haven't already. Great time to go back through your prep supplies and check it out because there is all kinds of crazy going down in the world right now. Within the United States, we have all this gun legislation. I don't know if you've seen the fight that's going on with California and all that, but it's just ridiculous. And we're sitting here bickering amongst ourselves. Well, Pakistan's arming to go to war with India, and China's involved in that whole thing. And these are big nuclear powers, but nobody's talking about any of that stuff. So get prepared, okay? Take care of your family and start finding like-minded people that you can take care of because it's just really, really important. Now is the time. So I have Raymond Dean White back on my show today. I absolutely love Ray. Met Ray when I very first started out on my author journey. I've had him on the show a lot, but we've never focused specifically on his books. So we're going to take a little bit of time to do that today. But Ray and I talked about a myriad of other subjects. And I'm going to include that for you as a little bit of bonus material on my blog. So that if you're interested in hearing about, just world events and prepper ins and outs and things that we were talking about, you can find that material there. Last week on Battle for the South, Sergeant Bennett and Dexter, they're on the run now. They found this hiding hole where they can hang out till the city calmed down a little bit. So a little bit of plot convenience because I am a fictional writer, but a great situation, really action-packed for them to be in. This week, I don't know if you could say great situation, but awkward situation. Anyhow, this week we catch back up with Vince and Erica. And they are leaving Texas right now because they had the run-in with Cassidy. They're not happy with how things are going. And so they're going to leave Texas, they're leaving the new Texas, the Freedom Zone, headed for Dallas, which is now in the federal zone of the United States, and to get Nancy. So that's their mission that they're on this week. And we're going to catch up with them there. And then afterwards, like I said, I got Raymond Dean White on. Super stoked that he could make time, come back on the show. We're going to be talking about the Dying Times trilogies. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into Battle for the South. Chapter 15. The light was just beginning to brighten the darkness outside the window when Erica awoke. She had not slept well, despite her exhaustion from the day before. The argument she had with Vince over leaving Daniel haunted her mind. She questioned over and over if she had done the right thing. Maybe I should have talked to Bennett, she scolded herself. He could have told me he knew about the next quake, she argued back to herself. Then there was this woman, Cassidy. Erica could never make the choice to take the life of her father seem logical in Cassidy's eyes. Erica couldn't blame her. She would want blood for the life of a family member as well. The window began to brighten slowly. They would have to leave into the unknown today, completely on their own. Now there was no place safe left for them to go. They would be on the run forever. What did I do? Erica cursed herself. She sighed heavily in despair. You up already? Vince whispered sleepily behind her. She slowly rolled over to look at him. I'm so sorry, she said with tears in her eyes. We both made the choice to come, Vince reassured her. Yeah, but you didn't want to break the family up. We left Daniel, Erica worried. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought we could get in and get out. You were thinking of saving your mom, of saving Greg and Penny and Carmen. I don't know how, but we are going to make it. We'll go to Dallas, meet back up with Star, get your mom, and go through the southwestern gate, Vince said confidently, trying to get Erica to smile. Oh, you got it all figured out, do you? Erica teased, watching Vince's eyes dance. It sounds good, doesn't it? Vince replied. It does, Erica answered, feeling more confident. Badger brought them in breakfast and told Vince quietly how much he would miss his jokes. Vince and Erica ate quickly and were packed and ready to leave shortly after.
Erica felt a foreboding sense of trepidation as they walked down the hallway towards the lobby. She didn't want another confrontation with Cassidy. Luckily, only Melvin awaited them there. Erica was still enamored by his mature, muscular physique and green eyes. "Miss Moore, I heard what you tried to do for those people in the hospital. It was an honorable effort. Mr. Ferguson was very impressed with you. Governor Dixon wanted me to urge you not to go," Melvin pleaded. "Do I have to participate in a death match with Cassidy?" Erica wondered. "There's nothing I can do about that. The law is the law," Melvin responded sadly. "Then we have to go," Erica replied. "It was really great to have met you," Vince said, holding his hand out for Melvin to shake. "Sorry, Melvin, but it is what it is," Erica said, holding her hand out as well. But Melvin reached down and caught her up in a big hug. "I can have assistance for you at the southwestern gate. It's the least I can do," Melvin told them. "Thanks," they responded, heading out the door. They were ready to travel with their weapons concealed deeply beneath their clothing. They would be crossing into federal territory where they could be shot for possessing them, even if they weren't being actively hunted. Vince and Erica left the governor's compound headed for the gate to Old Austin. People on the streets, busy completing chores, waved to them as they went by and whispered to one another secretly. Erica wondered about their thoughts and chided herself for being their big hero who had to leave in exile. Erica was rippled with muscles and had trained relentlessly in different fighting styles. She felt confident she could dominate Cassidy in a fight, but she doubted that she could take the woman's life. Although she had taken countless lives before, it was always in defense, and Erica couldn't imagine entering a ring where the sole purpose was the death of her opponent. They were a couple of blocks from the gate when Kyle approached them. He had a bag full of gear on his back. "Thank goodness I caught up to you before you left. I can't believe you're leaving, but I understand why. So I'm going with you," Kyle announced. "It's not a good idea, Kyle," Vince replied immediately. "Out there, you'll be with federal traitors. If they catch us, you'll end up in the refugee system, or worse." "Seriously, Kyle, you're a free man here. Don't throw that away," Erica agreed with Vince. "You're right, I am a free man, and I'm free to go with you," Kyle argued. Erica thought that Kyle was making a horrible decision. They were consumed in the argument when suddenly she was grabbed from behind and her hands were bound quickly. She watched Vince and Kyle struggling as men held some sort of a cloth over their faces. She smelled a penetrating smell, almost like gasoline or paint remover. Vince and Kyle fell into the arms of their attackers before they could even turn to face them. The street was crowded, and Erica tried to scream when she felt a gag tightly wrapped through her mouth. Her weapons were found and taken. Erica followed the men dragging Vince and Erica down the street with little protest. Even if I could free myself, how could I save Vince and Kyle as well, she wondered. They went down a back alley just off the main street. Erica watched them lock Vince and Kyle into a small shed that adorned the alley. The door was closed and she heard a lock click on its latch. Erica stood on one side of a square that had been painted on the ground, and Cassidy stood on the other side, dressed in leather for a knife battle. Erica was released, unbound, and given a knife. "I told you I want blood, bitch," Cassidy declared, pacing around Erica with her knife. "And I told you I don't want to fight," Erica screamed loudly, hoping a bystander would hear. She watched a couple of people on the street alert to the commotion in the alley. "Go get help," she tried to psychologically tell them. Her eyes quickly refocused on Cassidy as the woman launched at her with the knife. Erica dodged, but Cassidy brought the blade back and it slashed across Erica's left tricep. Cassidy smiled a little, knowing she had done damage. Erica's arm stung, and she could feel blood trickling down it. Rage began to grow inside of her. "Fine. You want to fight? You gotta fight," Erica yelled, pulling off her shirt. Standing in her black sports bra and camo pants reminded her of being in the ring with her mentor, Master Sergeant Bennett. This time was different, though. Her arm hurt. There could be no more mistakes. Erica knew she would have to kill if she wanted to survive. Erica wheeled and deflected Cassidy's next attack with a circular evasion block with her right hand. She turned Cassidy around with the move and cut her with the knife on her arm as Erica pushed her away. It had been a deep slash, not unlike the one Erica had just received. Cassidy returned quickly and sloppily, Her anger was overwhelming her fighting abilities. She stabbed wildly as Erica used her footwork to evade her attacks. Slowly circling, her eyes stalking Cassidy, Erica awaited her moment to counterattack. Finally, Erica slipped past Cassidy's lunge and reached out to slice her side, but Cassidy was ready and sliced Erica across her cheek. Surprised by her skills, Erica and Cassidy attacked and counterattacked, glancing their knives off one another. Both women were bloody and exhausted when Cassidy gathered all her strength for a final blow. Erica lost hold of her knife and panic struck her. Oh shit, I underestimated her. Erica cursed herself as the reality of this critical mistake hit her like a ton of bricks. Cassidy lunged in for a jab through Erica's heart, but Erica dodged and locked Cassidy's arm so she no longer had the strength to hold the knife. Erica knocked her to the ground and straddled her, readying for the killing blow. Erica lifted the knife into the air, but she hesitated. She threw the knife into the opposing wall. I don't want to kill you, Erica screamed while blood dripped down her face and fell onto Cassidy's. I'm so sorry that I took your father's life, but nothing we do now or ever will bring him back. You're a strong woman and a good leader. You're a proud American, and the militia is going to rely upon you. Erica realized there was cheering as she said these words. Looking up through blood-stained eyes, she saw a large crowd that had gathered to watch the fight. Here we are, fighting amongst one another when the real fight is out there. Our country weakens more and more every day, and I will not take the life of someone who is fighting for freedom. For the freedom of you all, Erica addressed the crowd, stood up and backed away from Cassidy. So Cassidy, go ahead and kill me. Erica picked up her knife off the ground as Cassidy rose to her feet. She held the handle out towards her. A gash on the right side of Cassidy's head matted her hair down with blood. She was still breathing heavily as she stared at the knife in Erica's hand. Go ahead, Erica urged her, moving the knife closer to her. Cassidy slowly took the knife out of Erica's hand. Go ahead and kill me if you think that will honor the memory of your father, Erica declared. She waited and watched Cassidy thinking. Cassidy took the knife up into the air, spun, and threw it into the wall next to where Erica had thrown her knife. The crowd went ecstatic with celebration. Cassidy turned back, waiting for Erica to make her next move. Would you stand side by side with me and fight? Erica professed, extending her hand. The crowd was enormous now, and Cassidy stared in wonder as they thundered in approval. They were ready to stand and fight with Erica. Cassidy relented and extended her hand. Erica pulled her in, and the two bleeding women embraced. I am so sorry, Erica whispered to her. The crowd parted as Melvin suddenly appeared. Ignoring the condition of the two women, he stated directly, The northern region is under attack from the federal forces. What? Erica was unsure if she had heard him right. The federal forces have invaded the northern region to extinguish the mercenary threat. He held his hands up and made quote symbols with his fingers in the air. Located there. We need you all back at the governor's compound now. If you have this all worked out, Melvin chuckled at them. Yeah, we do, Cassidy responded. Where's Vince? Melvin wondered. One of Cassidy's men opened the door and Vince and Kyle emerged, holding their pounding heads and groggily taking account of the scene. What the fuck? Vince yelled to the guy who opened the door. Erica went to him. His head was down as the relentless thundering drummed in his mind. It's okay, baby, I'm fine, Erica assured him. Curious what could be wrong with her, he looked up at the results of her confrontation with Cassidy. You're fine? Look at you. Vince's anger was justified. Cassidy and I sorted everything out, Erica assured him. Is she okay? He wondered. Usually if his wife was this beat up, someone else had died. She's fine. I mean, she'll be fine. But Vince, Melvin just told us that the northern region is being invaded by the federal forces. We have to go back to the governor's compound and find out what the hell is going on, Erica explained. What about Daniel, Erica? Vince was outraged. Damn it, I knew something like this was going to happen. He held his head tighter. All we can do is go back and find out what is going on, and how we can contact Major Burgess. He will have gotten Daniel, Erica comforted him, knowing there had always been an exit plan even before they left. I hope you're right, Vince worried. The crowd was clearing and Melvin was waiting impatiently for them. Vince knew they had no choice but to follow and pray that God had them right where he wanted them to be. Rapidly changing circumstances causes another change of plans for Vince and Erica, and they gotta just, at this point, you gotta just believe that you're on your fated course, because there's not a whole lot you can do from an individual standpoint, so it's more about bonding together with teams to be able to change realities. This is one of my favorite chapters just because it brings Erica's story kind of full circle. But it is also one action-packed knife fight, and you guys know that I love the one-on-one self-defense action parts and things like that, so I would be jumping up and down in my living room watching this on TV right now. Anyway, today I have Raymond Dean White on, and he is the author of the Dying Time series. Raymond Dean White was born in a small town in Kansas and lived an adventurous life, hunting, fishing, trapping, and tracking, backpacking, splunking, and mountaineering until he got older, wiser, and married. A lifelong avid reader, he writes what he loves to read. Fast-paced action-adventure stories complete with intriguing characters, a touch of humor, and a bit of information thrown in on how to prepare for emergencies. As a hyperactive 10-year-old who still loved to read, he stumbled onto Andre Norton's Starman's Son, and his lifelong love affair with apocalyptic fiction was born. Now retired, he writes terrorist thrillers and apocalyptic action-adventure novels, including The Dying Time, Impact, and After the Dying Time. He has also written one nonfiction book titled How I Got Published, Famous Authors Tell How in Their Own Words, which details their and his adventures in traditional publishing. That book, co-authored with Dwayne Lindsay, is currently available on Amazon. Ray has also written another nonfiction book since that time called Bugging In, and you can get a free download of that book at www.raymonddeanwhite.com. That's www.raymonddeanwhite.com. We're going to have Ray on in just a second. However, let's go ahead and get a word from our sponsors.
Today I want to tell you about a video that was just released by the man who notoriously predicted Trump's victory. He was one of the few who predicted Trump would win the presidential election, and he was even mocked on live TV for saying Hillary would lose. He's also notorious for predicting other major events, such as the financial fiasco in 2008. I'm talking about Jim Rickards. He's the nation's most vocal and intelligent proponent of the gold standard. Not to mention, he's a national security advisor, Pentagon insider, and financial warfare expert. Well, now he's making another shocking Trump prediction, one that he anticipates the fake news media will not cover. If you want to hear about this shocking prediction, go to www.author-sarah-f-hathaway.com/newsletter. This shocking prediction could impact your life and the lives of millions of Americans. Go to www.author-sarah-f-hathaway.com/newsletter and click on the show notes for this week's podcast. That's www.author-sarah-f-hathaway.com/newsletter.
Welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. Today I am here with Raymond Dean White. You guys should all know him from past episodes of my show. He's been a little bit absent, so we are happy, very happy that everything has worked out and he has time to come back and spend it with us. So Ray, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate being here.
Well, it's just my pleasure. You've been with me since the beginning, and I understand that you had a lot of medical problems. Your wife did, and we said a lot of prayers. And I'm just so thankful to God that you are a little bit out of the water now and ready to engage with some survival fiction books. So why don't you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you've been working on, and we'll just go from there.
Okay, well, my name is Raymond Dean White. My books are all available on Amazon. I started out a love affair with post-apocalyptic fiction when I was 10 years old, and I stumbled into Andre Norton's Starman's Son story, and that was it. After that, I've read every apocalyptic fiction novel I could get my hands on, basically. And after being an avid reader for, the better part of 40 years, I started writing and found that I really loved creating a world where I got to populate the world with characters that I invented, make them say things I wanted them to say, throw action at them and unforeseen consequences at them and see how they reacted. It just, being a writer is kind of a kick, to be honest. And I can't say I found my calling doing that, but I'm pretty close to it. I love it. I started out, oh my God, back in the 80s, I started out writing a short story called The Dying Time. And in that book, which I did expand that short story into a full-length novel, in that book, I slammed a large asteroid into the Earth and wrecked basically all of civilization's infrastructure. You couldn't use the roads, dams broke, volcanoes popped off, earthquakes, mega tsunamis, firefalls from the magma coming back down onto the Earth after the impact. I mean, it's a really, really intense story of survival. And I guess unlike a lot of authors, I actually start before the impact, take you up to the impact, and take you all the way through the first few years of the impact.
That's what I love about, I hate the stories, a lot of Hollywood movies that like, oh, the big disaster is going to happen. And they show you right up to the disaster and then, oh, it's all good. I'm like, come on, let's see the disaster. What happens after that? That's what I did with my book as well.
Yeah, because it can be a mega disaster like a huge asteroid impact. It would be years before people put together enough wherewithal to even really begin rebuilding civilization.
Yes.
You'd have a lot of isolated homesteads. You'd have farms and small farm communities and small towns that would basically be banding together to produce enough food to keep themselves alive.
So why did you pick the asteroid? I'm just curious,
well, back when I first had the idea, it was new.
Okay, yeah.
No, seriously.
Right.
I started writing that story in 1982. Okay, it was like before books like Lucifer's Hammer came out and stuff.
Right.
So, which, by the way, my book has been compared favorably to Lucifer's Hammer by several reviewers.
I believe it.
It's a big. I love that because Lucifer's Hammer was one of my very favorite books.
I love the aspect. You have the characters that are out in space, right? Watching it happen as well.
Yes, I do. I literally stranded the crew of the ISS because once the impact occurred. Everything was so messed up they couldn't come back to Earth. And so as the years have evolved since this impact happened, they've had to adapt and meet all of their new challenges too. Because now, in my book, people saw the asteroid coming, the government did.
Right.
And the governments of the world did cooperate, and they sent a kind of vastly expanded crew up to the ISS and launched a bunch of, you could call it cargo ships, for want of a better term, but modules that the ISS could use so they had supplies that they could live off of. But it wasn't enough because originally people on Earth were thinking, okay, if this is really a bad disaster, these folks will have to make it for a couple of years at most, and then they'll be able to come back down here and we'll start rebuilding civilization again.
Right.
Well, as it turns out, they're up there for so long that the effects of weightlessness on their physiology weakens them to the point where they couldn't survive coming back to Earth. And they end up relocating to the moon.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and there was all different cultures too, so that was interesting, because it's not just like la-di-da, hunky-dory, like it's all peaceful up there too, right? No,
there's I like to weave a lot of conflict throughout my
I
book.
like that.
There's very little of, oh, we all just get along in my books. There's a lot more like, I have my interest and you have yours, and sometimes our heads butt.
Right. Yeah, and of course,
but,
and that's what keeps you jamming too. There's a Netflix show, I think they might have read your book. It's called The 100, and it was basically a nuclear disaster, and they send everybody out, well, they send all these groups into space, to try to survive up there for like 100 years until the planet's livable again, And so it's they're sending down like the first group of people down to see if the planet is still livable, and so they send like
I've seen it.
100 kids. Yeah. Have you? Yeah, I love that
Yeah.
show. I was like, oh, that is awesome. They always get a little wonky towards the end, but the beginning was like a perfect concept, so you'll like it. So it took you a while to write it. When did you first publish the full story from your short story? I didn't even know that you started it as a short story only.
I started as a short story and I never published it.
Okay.
I just because I started out and I kept adding to it. I kept adding more characters and more plot lines, and it kind of evolved into the book that. Let's see, when did I actually get that thing out there? Oh my God. I'm thinking 2014. So from beginning to final product was about 32 years. Okay.
Now you beat me on Day After Disaster. Mine was like 8. So
yeah,
nice.
And then after The Dying Time, the second book in the Dying Time trilogy, I was able to put it out the very next year because I'd been working on it as I was working on the original.
And the second one is the one where they're dealing with trying to have the missile, right, that they can shoot. There's another impact coming at them.
Well,
am I right?
Yes, there is, because in the first book, basically what the government is able to do in the first book is essentially split the asteroid that hits the Earth in half. And the other half is going to come back and smack into the Earth in about another 20 years from the time of the original impact. And there are some people left alive down on Earth after this first impact who know that. And so they're in a bit of a scramble to try to prevent the second impact. But mostly the second book actually is about how society largely devolves into a feudal state.
Right.
Because of the total destruction of the infrastructure.
The West Coast King.
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. There's the King of California.
Yep.
Okay. And he's a badass. You just you don't want him taking over your life. And then we have, of course, the protagonists that are out in Utah and Colorado and the Indian tribes and things like that, where they all band together to fight the guy. And to be honest, largely the second book is kind of a war story because they're fighting off this guy invading their turf, their homesteads, their land, their nations, if you will. Trying to keep him from destroying everything that they've been able to rebuild. Mm-hmm. The third book in the series, which is the one I'm working on now, it's called, in the Dying Time series, is called Freedom Rising.
Okay. I was going to say, I haven't read that one.
No, that's because it hasn't come out yet.
Because it hasn't come out yet. All right.
I'm still working on it. But the basic idea behind that is when we resolve this whole problem with the king and resolve the problem with the third asteroid, or the second asteroid coming in. I was going to say,
I don't remember how that played out with the other asteroid coming in. And I'm like, did I not finish it or something? But
no, it was not resolved in the second book.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the second book the first book started up before the impact and went through the impact for a few years. Okay. The second book picked up 12 years after the impact and only covered about a 2-year period. of this invasion by the King of California and stuff like that. All right. So the third book takes up where the second book left off, even though all of these books are standalone novels. Okay.
Right. Yes, they are.
But they still share that similar theme. In the third book, the protagonist, the freeholds, and the people from Utah are basically going to launch a rebellion against the King of California and try to take him down, because they've realized that, first of all, he knows about the weapon that has been developed to destroy the second asteroid.
Right.
And he wants control of it. He doesn't believe that there's a second asteroid coming.
Okay, he just
Because
wants
after
control of
all,
the weapon.
hey, it was 65 million years between the other two impacts that were major.
Right.
You know? And so he doesn't believe there's another asteroid coming. All right. So he wants control of that weapon, because that weapon is a space-based laser that could incinerate any place on Earth. It would give him control of the world, in essence. And that's his ambition.
Yes, to be the king of the world, king of the hill.
So in order to save the weapon and save the world, we have to get rid of the king. That's basically the plot of the third book.
Yeah. And you
but
have some
we don't have the armed forces.
Yes.
To take over the king, because the empire that he has built up has a greater population base and more resources in that regard. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we couldn't just invade California and take them out. So we've got to build an underground movement, kind of like think the French resistance during World War II.
Yeah. Where they had to develop all the underground, to be able to fight them back.
Yeah. So while there's still a lot of action and adventure going on, there's a lot more suspense going on in this book too, as the Allied spies and the King spies interact, shall we say.
So one of the things that I love about your books is it's not a far stretch from reality. So like sometimes, people paint so far out the lines that you're like, really? Yeah, I don't know, right? It's kind of hokey. But yours are definitely not like that. So obviously you did a lot of research. What were kind of some of your key areas that you researched to really, bring this book into reality?
Well, both of the first two books have a lot of prepper information in them.
Yes.
The people who survive the impact, many of them are preppers. They had stores, they had solar systems, they had access to water, they had some medical supplies stockpiled, they had a mutual assistant group set up already. These people could rely on each other in bad times.
Right.
Those were largely the people who survived. Now, of course, I used fictional license and allowed gangs like out in California to basically come to the fore and take over that area.
Yeah, thanks.
But then out in California, those gangs would be the likeliest people to be armed. So
they would. It's true.
So anyhow,
because,
I didn't think that was that much of a stretch, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're trying to disarm the good people anyway right now. So
But all my life, though, this is something I grew up with. My grandparents were preppers before anybody had even thought of that term.
Called it that.
They survived the Great Depression.
Yeah, exactly.
And they always had a huge garden. They had chickens. They had a milk cow. And this was on a 2-acre lot at the edge of a little town.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like they're on a huge farm or anything, but they were
No, they're not on a great big farm or anything like that. But they had basically a 1-acre garden. They had fruit trees. I mean, I was just raised like that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the knowledge just came with me. plus, if you were a Boy Scout, what's their motto? Be prepared.
Right. I know. Everybody's
Okay?
like, "Oh, you're a prepper." I'm like, "Well, do you have car insurance? Do you
That's
have
my
homeowners
favorite
insurance?
analogy.
Right? Do
Yep.
you have a spare tire in your vehicle? Looks like you're a prepper too."
Hey, you got a fire extinguisher in your house?
Yeah, you're preparing for something to happen. That's
That's
the same.
all of being a prepper is emergency situation insurance. That's what it
Exactly.
is.
Yes,
And
I
it's
love
cheap peace of mind.
it. Emergency
It's not that we
insurance.
expect the world to end. It's not that we hope that the world will end.
Right?
It's a prepare for the worst, hope for the best.
Yes. Yeah. At least,
And-
if you're thinking about it a little bit, if something were to happen, that's why I'm like, we got to get food back growing in our cities, because these poor
Right.
people that are down in the cities, if something happens, it's over. You have a
On a
2-day
hopeful
food
note-
supply there.
On a hopeful note, there are a lot of folks out there now doing community gardening
Yes.
in cities.
Yes.
Okay, and that has helped to turn some of this
And
around.
rooftop,
But
rooftop
but
gardens.
one of the sets of skills that I found interesting, because I've always liked gardening. Well, all I did was I shifted from growing hybrid plants to growing heirlooms,
Yeah.
and I learned how to save seed so that I could grow those same varieties that I liked over and over and over without having to go buy more seed. I took that heirloom gardening knowledge, and that's by the way, a fairly large part of the nonfiction book that I wrote called Bugging In: What to Do When the Shit Hits the Fan and You Live in Suburbia.
Yes.
It's all about how to have a small garden that is productive enough to keep you alive, how to raise rabbits and chickens, things like that are easy enough to do in most suburban areas, to where you have
That's awesome
a food
too, 'cause
source.
I've had so many people, on the edge of, in suburbia, closer to cities, urban areas and stuff, and they're like, "Sara, you've got to give us some information on doing this." And I'm like, I would love to do that. I can research it. I can make it happen. However, I've been a country girl my whole life. It's hard for me to relate to being on that smaller property, or it's just hard for me to relate to that situation where
Well,
I've been out.
Sara, tell them to sign up for my newsletter. I've got articles about gardening. I've got articles about raising rabbits and raising chickens. I've got all kinds of stuff like that. And if they sign up for my newsletter, they get Bugging In for free.
I got some Muscovy ducks, and
There you go.
They are so much quieter, right, than chickens.
Yeah.
They don't make all that noise, and they still lay eggs. They're huge birds. I mean, the breasts that you take out of these birds are just like a goose breast, I mean, big birds.
And here's another benefit to ducks. If you have a garden and you have slugs in your garden, turn the ducks loose in your garden, and it will be slug-free before you know it.
Right, and the chickens will rip your garden up, but the ducks don't do that as much. So.
Now, wait a minute. I got to back you up on that one. Okay. Once your plants are well established,
yeah, they are bad.
If you have seedlings, you don't want birds of any kind anywhere near them.
Right,
okay?
right.
But if you have fully grown tomato and potato plants and things like that, my grandma used to let the chickens run free range into the garden once the plants were up and established, and they did a real good job of they eat some greenery.
Right,
but they also ate the potato bugs and things like that, and the caterpillars. And I'll tell you what, if you haven't ever seen a chicken chasing a grasshopper, it's hilarious.
Lived, right? Yeah. So the tomato worms, right? We get fierce tomato worms here.
Oh yeah, the hornworms are awful. Yeah.
Right. So what I've found is if you plant borage near your tomato plant, you don't get any tomato worms. And it's beautiful plant to plant with your tomatoes. I'm just like, I will never grow tomatoes again without the borage nearby because it does. And it grows up into a beautiful plant with these purple flowers. They're gorgeous, you know. And it does have medicinal benefits as well. I mean, you don't want to
There's so much to learn about gardening. I mean, from how to prepare the soil properly, what pH you need to grow which type of vegetables best, oh, excuse me, I got to get out of this room while that other phone is ringing. But companion planting guides.
Yes.
And also identifying insect pests so that you know which ones are good ones and which one to take care of and which ones you want in your garden. It's not just as easy as, oh boy, it's a ladybug, I want them around, you know. There's all kinds of beneficial insects that you need for gardening. I mean, this knowledge even can transfer to things like beekeeping, because without bees, we're really up a creek without a paddle when it comes to producing food crops.
Right, that's true. Luckily, I have neighbors that do bees, so I don't have to worry about that as much. But
well, here in Northwest Arizona, we happen to have a really healthy wild honeybee population.
Okay.
And so as soon as my plants start to flower, like my fruit trees were flowering in early February.
Right. We had bloomers here, and then we got hit with winter again. So I don't.
Yeah, we did too, but it didn't kill all of the blossoms. And but in any event, the bees were out in force.
Yep.
So pollination is, we're lucky that way. Some people aren't. The place where we have our most serious prepper emergency is in our water supply.
Yeah.
I live at 3,700 feet in Northwest Arizona, and the nearest major body of water is the Colorado River 60 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, you got every drop of water, that we consume here is pumped out of the ground.
Right.
And recently we've had some East Coast trust hedge fund companies come in and buy up a bunch of land and start planting alfalfa.
Oh,
and they're
sweet.
sinking.
So they're going to be draining the reservoirs.
Listen, they're sinking 16-inch diameter wells, hundreds of them. And it won't take long before everybody that has a well is going to be dry.
Yep.
I mean, we're talking about 20 years tops. They're going to drain this aquifer because they're pumping it out so much faster than it's being recharged.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they're having that same problem with the Ogallala Reservoir.
Oh yeah, they've had that for a long time though.
Right? Yeah.
I mean,
keep sinking deeper and deeper and deeper into it, and I'm like.
Well, and the problem is that you can only go down so deep in most aquifers till the water starts getting saline. Okay. The problem here, for example, it's called the Sacramento aquifer and the Mojave Basin aquifer. Those two aquifers border each other, and in the Sacramento Basin aquifer, you go down about 1,700 feet, and the water gets so heavily mineralized. I called it salty, but it's just it's all kinds of nasty minerals that you don't want in your water. Things like arsenic, cadmium, crap like that. Okay.
Nice.
Okay, we ain't drinking that stuff. So, but these people, they're pumping those aquifers dry, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's their legal right to do it right now.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Once stuff hits the fan, I got a feeling those pumps aren't going to be working anymore.
Yeah. They'll be at home worried about their own families. That's just scary though too. But we have
I guess what I'm saying is this: once something like that happens, those pumps won't be functioning because they won't be functional.
Right.
Because I know people who live around there who've already figured it out that
They're like,
in order to preserve their water supply, they're going to have to take those things out.
Out. Yeah. Well, and I mean, go get the alfalfa seeds. Do sprouts.
Well, the thing is, alfalfa is a water-hungry crop.
Right. Why the heck are you growing
It's about
in
the worst
Arizona?
crop you can imagine to grow. Other than almonds, it's the worst crop you can imagine growing in a desert.
Right?
Only almonds, I think, are hungrier for water than alfalfa. It's a terrible.
Yeah.
Those are
I don't
terrible
understand
crops to grow
why.
in a desert.
And they're like out here. They take away. They're building all these homes and stuff down along all the farmland, basically.
Yep.
Every year more and more farmland is lost.
Let's build on the arable land because it's easier to build on.
Right. Where, we have the foothills. Don't get me wrong. I don't want them all up in my area either. But if you think about it like big scale, you're not going to be growing huge crops up in the foothills. It's a lot more difficult than you would down in those floodplains where it's just rich for it. That's originally how they made a lot of money out here.
Look, agribusiness in California is probably still the leading industry in the state.
Exactly. And they're like, oh, we don't need that. We're just going to take all the water down to L.A. and the farmers are getting screwed. And it's like, no, that's what this country was founded on. That's why they built those levees, or this state. I mean, that it was growing. They took the desert and turned it into a floodplain on purpose, and Sacramento was a floodplain, but okay, a controlled floodplain, right, for the farmers to be able to grow food, to feed.
Well, and then you had some EPA regulations that came down the pike in recent years.
Oh yeah.
That prevented the farmers who were growing food that people needed from using the river water that they had access to and legally belonged to them, so to speak.
Right.
They weren't able to utilize all of it because, it might make some salamander or some small fish extinct,
Exactly.
a pupfish or something. And
that's true.
I hate the thought of exterminating a species of any kind. I really do. There's enough of an environmentalist in me to where I don't like that thought.
Mm-hmm.
But it also
Sometimes
comes down to survival of the fittest.
Right. Exactly. And so that's the same problem that's been holding up desalination plants and stuff, where California could have tons of water if we would start desalinating. But no, we're not going to do that, That's what Israel's doing. Like 98% of Israel's water is all desalination. But because the little horned toad or whatever we might be disrupting, we can't do that. So now it creates this huge water war within our state, and you have farmers who have rights to that water. Well, sometimes it's more profitable for them to just load up trucks with the water and take it down to Southern California and sell it.
Isn't that incredible?
Right?
But
instead of growing their stuff.
And it's all of this stuff. It's great for short-term profit and counter to long-term survival.
Yeah, it's like the big picture.
Yeah. But anyhow, to wrap up what I was saying about my books, one of the things that the readers, for example, The Dying Time has more than 300 excellent reviews on Amazon now. And one of the things that people that have contacted me say that they really liked about my books was they enjoyed the plot, they enjoyed the action, they thought the characters were fun and intriguing. Okay, and the action was gripping, is the word I think that has been used most frequently.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, but they enjoyed the appendix that I put at the back of the book that has all of these prepper websites and prepper tools and all kinds of information. It just goes for pages and pages and pages. And if you get the ebook version, those links, for the most part, are still active. Mm-hmm. So it saves people from having to do all the research. They can just go to the back of the book and go through the appendix and click on these links and learn all the stuff that I had to research in order to write the book.
Right. Yeah, learning, teaching the survival fact and fiction. That's why I really connected with you, because it's like, you can write a great story and you can have a lot of fun with that story and you can tantalize people's minds with it and get them really thinking. But then if you just leave them there, then what? Well, then where do they go? Where, they get so confused, they kind of give up on it or whatever. No, like keep teaching through the story as well, so that, like we were talking about before the interview, the more people you teach, the less people have you knocking at your door, right?
Yep. The other part is, of course, that in the book itself, I throw in some prepper information. I have characters doing things that preppers do.
Yes.
They're doing it, generally speaking, it's not like, oh, here's Bob down in his basement just moving some stuff around and taking inventory of all of the goodies that he has, No. It's like, here's the community trying to figure out if they got enough stuff to survive the next month.
Right. Yeah, it brings it home to like
and how and what they can, what ingenuity. Okay, look, hey, we've got alfalfa seeds. We don't have any sunshine to grow alfalfa. Let's start doing sprouts so that we get the vitamins that we need. Vitamin C, don't get scurvy, stuff like that. Right. We can grow mushrooms in the dark. There's ways.
Really can.
There's ways to do things to keep the food supply. Even if it's at a trickle, and even if you're starving, you're not dying.
Right, it's something in the belly. So one of my favorite parts is the appearance of the elephant. I know it's just little and minuscule, but I love the elephant. It's so classic. I'm like, is that really an elephant? Yep.
I do have humorous scenes all through these books, even though sometimes they're dreadful and sometimes they're gory. Okay. Right. But I do lighten that up then. I have little humor scenes involved in there, just to keep people's interest from.
Well, it's classic
a
too.
Steady diet of just rapid fire action actually gets fatiguing after a while.
Yeah, it does.
And so you have to break it up a little bit, and, show some people laughing and enjoying their lives, not just the grim battle for survival.
Right.
24/7, 365.
Yeah.
And I like, because that's what I like to read, though. That's what I tell people. I write what I like to read. I like to read fast-paced action thriller type stories that have a touch of humor in them to keep things moving along and keep things fun and entertaining.
Well,
that's my thing.
Let's wrap it up with like the the three biggest takeaways that you hope that people would take away from your books, since we're on the topic anyway.
Okay. Well, number one, I would hope that what they would take from my book is the knowledge that they should be doing something to get themselves and their families prepared for an emergency situation. Forget the asteroid ending the world.
Right.
Okay? What about the hurricane that's going to leave you without power for 21 days? What about the tornado that's going to take your house?
What about your spouse losing their job?
Yeah, really, it could be economic disasters are the most common disasters that we face.
Exactly.
It could be your spouse losing your job. It could also be something as dynamic as, the multi-trillion-dollar debt that we're heading towards. We could see a worldwide depression.
Yeah, for sure.
Because of an economic collapse around the world. So, but that's again hard. It's hard to if you're a beginning prepper. It's hard to think in terms of that, in terms of global situations. It's a lot easier to figure out, I can store a week's worth of food for my family in the pantry. I can get some bottles of water, and set them aside in case the power goes out to where I don't have access to. I can even get a survivor filter.
Yep.
So that if we run out of water, we can literally, drink pond scum water without getting sick.
Right.
There's things that are not expensive that make sense for people to do. I mean, if you don't have a get home bag in your car,
Yeah.
you're heading for trouble if you ever have a problem out on the road. I can't even. When I was a backpacker in Colorado, I never went anywhere without a fully loaded backpack in the trunk of the car, because I was driving mountain passes in the wintertime, because I did a lot of ski touring and winter mountaineering and stuff like that, and you can get stranded.
Yeah, easily.
Avalanches can close the roads, and it can be, overnight or longer before they dig through and get you out. So it just made sense to me. Like I said, I've been a prepper forever, and it made sense to me to do that type of thing. And when it comes to you and your own family, have a few supplies in your car to ride out an emergency. Maybe it's only an emergency of a few hours, But let me tell you something. Like I said, I live in northwest Arizona. Towns out here, a lot of them are like 50, 60 miles apart. You get stranded out in the middle of one of these places, you better have some water on hand.
Right?
So,
yeah, I keep
anyhow,
I'm in the same boat out here in California. I mean, you get hooked, stranded just for a little bit. You better have some bottles of water with you. I mean, it's going to get hot real quick.
Hang on a second, Sarah.
Okay.
Jane. One of the things that preppers have to do is form a mutual assistance group. One of the people who's in my group lives across the road from me, and he notified me a couple of days ago that he was going to be out of town, and he had some supplies coming in FedEx, and asked me if I would keep an eye on his place, so that if the FedEx truck got there when he wasn't there, I could pick those supplies up and
right,
put them out of sight from the road and stuff like that, so that people don't walk off with them. That my wife was tapping on the window to the office here, shouting at me that the FedEx truck was over at Larry's.
Go get him! Go get him!
Yeah, so that's part of being a good neighbor.
Yep.
You start out being a good neighbor, and pretty soon you'll find that you have a mutual assistance group.
Yes, it's true, and that's kind of how it works out, huh? Just doing the right thing ends up into friends, hey, we could actually stick it out together if we needed to.
Yep.
Maybe we should organize something so that we're not in like a cluster mess when we get there, right?
Right, exactly.
So,
well,
right,
Sarah, I hope this interests some people in reading my books.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I've got hundreds of really great reviews on Amazon, but if they sign up for my newsletter,
where can they do that at? Give me a link.
www.raymonddeanwhite.com.
Perfect. All right.
If they go to that, if they go to that, they'll get a free copy of Bugging In just for signing up for the newsletter.
Perfect. And it looks like a great book. I'm going to peruse it myself, and then we can definitely talk about how that went.
Oh yeah, I'd love to get your take on it. I really would.
Yeah.
An interesting little side note before we get off here. I have a good friend, helps me edit my books. I help him edit his, co-author on a lot of stuff, and but not a prepper mentality at all.
Right.
I sent him this book, Bugging In, to edit for me.
Right.
And he emailed me back or called me back actually, and told me, "Man, I got to congratulate you, because I thought this was going to be some kind of like dry, uninteresting, okay, here's a list of plants you can grow and, blah, blah, blah. He said, you made it fun to read."
Nice. Well, that's always important. You don't want to be like, this is blah, blah, blah.
It really
blah,
is.
blah.
You don't want to, you don't want to write boring. Turns people off. You got to have a sense of humor everywhere on any of this stuff, and it keeps people invested and reading.
Right.
So,
right.
I guess I can let you go then, huh?
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. Hopefully everybody will go and check out the Dying Time series. It's a really cool series. I enjoyed it myself, and I can't wait for that third one to come out. And then,
all right, thank you.
Yeah, I got to get
It'll
you
be
caught
out
up on
this
my
year.
series. Okay, perfect.
All righty.
All right, have a good
Bye,
one.
Sarah.
All right, bye. All right, Ray, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It was my pleasure to host you again. It had been a long time since we got together and chatted, about a year and a half, and I'm so happy that everything worked out for the love of your life and that everything's looking better, you know. Definitely a scary thing to go through, and I said a lot of prayers along the way, and I'm so happy that it's getting better. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. The Self-Reliance Expo is coming up March 23rd and 24th in Mesquite, Texas. It is going to be a blast. I just got the speaker lineups and things like that, and it is looking like a really informational event. I wish I could be in my booth and everywhere, all over at all of their stages at once, because they're just going to have a really action-packed time down there. So that's March 23rd and 24th. In Mesquite, Texas. So go ahead and check that out. You can link through to my website, and I hope to see you there. Next week is looking like it's going to be another fantastic show. It's an interview I was very honored to get, and it's going to be on sniper tactics. So you know I was just bouncing for joy to have this conversation. So definitely something to look forward to. So until next time, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sara for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, and Battle for the South at www.author.sarafhathaway.com. If you love Sara's books and this podcast, please head over to Amazon or iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.